Since losing his younger brother, Vincent appears to have lived in a prolonged state of emotional disruption, attachment instability, and unresolved grief. Looking closely at his behavior and overall life pattern, the loss seems to have affected not only his mood, but also the way he forms relationships, interprets rejection, manages stress, seeks meaning, and responds to perceived abandonment. The first thing that stands out is that the loss does not seem to have remained a contained grief event in the past. It appears to have become an organizing wound in his life. A younger brother who was close in age is often not experienced merely as a sibling, but as a companion, mirror, rival, witness, and emotional constant. When that kind of person dies, the surviving brother can lose not just someone he loved, but also part of his own continuity. Since that loss, Vincent appears to have carried a heightened sensitivity to emotional distance and a deep difficulty tolerating instability in close relationships. His behavior suggests that grief may have altered his attachment style in a serious way. He seems to become intensely invested in emotional bonds, especially when they give him a sense of closeness, rescue, or belonging. But once he senses inconsistency, silence, divided attention, or withdrawal, he appears to react with extreme urgency. This suggests a person who is not merely afraid of conflict, but afraid of disappearance. That distinction matters. For Vincent, emotional distance does not seem to register as ordinary relationship tension. It appears to register as loss, happening again. This may help explain why his reactions often become so intense. He does not seem able to simply let things sit when a bond feels threatened. Instead, he appears to become preoccupied, repetitive, searching, and emotionally escalated. He tries to clarify, fix, pursue, explain, plead, accuse, reconcile, and reestablish contact. That pattern is often seen in people whose grief has not fully healed and whose nervous system has become over-responsive to signs of abandonment. In Vincent's case, the death of his brother may have lowered his threshold for emotional alarm, making him far more reactive to ambiguity than someone without that history. There is also evidence that Vincent's life after the loss has been marked by chronic emotional loneliness. A sibling bond that close often provides a kind of unspoken grounding. Once it is gone, a person may spend years unconsciously trying to rebuild that sense of closeness somewhere else. Vincent appears to do this through intense attachment, emotional overinvestment, constant availability, and repeated efforts to make himself indispensable in relationships. He seems to want to become the person who solves, rescues, provides, and remains present no matter what. This may partly be love, but it also looks like compensation for grief. He appears to be trying to secure attachment by making himself necessary. That creates a difficult life pattern. When a person begins to link their value to how much they can provide, fix, carry, or endure, they often end up in lopsided relationships. Vincent seems to repeatedly take on the role of problem solver, financial helper, planner, emotional caretaker, and emergency contact. He appears to remain available even when the emotional environment is unstable or harmful. This may reflect a deep fear that if he stops giving, he will be left. In other words, after losing his brother, he may have come to believe that closeness must be earned through constant effort rather than received through mutual security. His grief also appears to have shaped his emotional identity. He seems drawn to strong feeling, high-stakes connection, and emotionally loaded bonds. Calm, mutual, predictable intimacy does not seem to be the mode he is living in. Instead, his life appears marked by drama, emotional intensity, loyalty tests, repeated rupture, and frantic repair attempts. This can happen when a person has unresolved grief and trauma around attachment. The nervous system becomes accustomed to emotional emergency. Stability can feel unfamiliar, while chaos begins to feel like proof that something meaningful is happening. Vincent's behavior suggests that he may be living in that kind of loop. Another major effect seems to be cognitive fixation. Since losing his brother, Vincent appears to have become someone who dwells intensely on perceived betrayal, hidden meanings, unresolved interactions, and broken trust. He does not seem able to easily release painful ambiguities. Instead, he revisits them, documents them, analyzes them, and tries to force coherence onto them. This may be because the original grief itself may never have felt fully resolved. When a person has one major loss that remains psychologically active, later emotional injuries often attach themselves to it. Then every betrayal feels bigger than itself, because it is no longer just about the present.